Hello, early birds. Looks like a few people have come in already. Grace, I met you. I saw you on the parents' call this morning. Nice to have you here. And Brandon is here. Okay, I see this note from Eric and Ellen. We are not parents, but wanted to join to better learn how to love our non-affirming or supportive parents. Hope that's okay. Everybody is welcome. Absolutely. The principles of good dialogue are applicable in every area of our lives, right? So we can use these with our children, with our partners, with our colleagues, with our neighbors, with our enemies, and with our friends. So I think it's relevant broadly. So all are welcome. I did download, or I should say I uploaded a couple of resources. One was my slides if people wanted to follow along or use those to take notes, if that's helpful. And the other thing was a document called A Good Question is a Gift. I highly recommend that even if you don't download it now, that at some point before is it WOVA or HUVA? I can't remember how we pronounce that. By the time that, well, while it's still up and accessible, please download that because it's a really helpful resource where I talk about what makes a more helpful kind of question and what makes a less helpful kind of question. And these are all real examples that I gathered from hundreds of gay folks who I've worked with. So it's a beautiful resource. So please check that out. And somebody uploaded a question on the actual session site, which the question was, how do we encourage those who aren't affirming to listen and be curious when they become defensive? So that's a great question too. That's not particularly or specifically related to our dialogue with our children, but I'm going to hold on to that. And if we have time at the end, we can talk about that. But a lot of the things we'll be discussing will be relevant, like I said, across all kinds of dialogue. So looks like it's time to start. So I'm just going to launch right in there. And as you filter in, just know that you're so welcome. So my job is to help people who have differing sexual orientations, gender identities, and especially theological convictions to come together and listen to each other across deep difference. I prepare them over an 8-week process, and then we get together for a confidential, intimate weekend where we communicate across deep difference. So that's where I'm coming from. My program that I run is called Oriented to Love. I'll leave a link at the end. I am a parent. I have 3 adult sons, 21, 25, and 28. None of them are gay. However, I have hundreds of gay young friends that I have met over the years through my work and have learned so much from them. And also I come to you as a parent who has been through, I would say, about a decade of really hard parenting challenges. Linda really appreciated that I did this upfront confessional last year, so I'm going to do a quick version again this year. So with my sons, I have already dealt with, as I'm sure many of you can relate, depression, other mental health issues, including suicidality, substance abuse and addiction, some illegal activity, bad relationships, estrangement, deception. So I'm not a parent of a gay kid, but I am a parent whose heart has been broken over and over again, and who has learned from so much from my kids, from their heartache and from how we've interacted with each other. So I just want to say it's not the family I dreamed of having when I started a family 28 years ago. And I think a lot of you can probably relate to that. And it's not the kind of family I grew up in either. The way I was raised did not really prepare me for the family that God asked me to raise with my husband. So And I also want to say it's really hard for me not to be able to see your faces. So I didn't have the option of seeing them. So just bear with me if I seem a little, it's hard for me not to have the connection. But so I just want to start by saying that true loving dialogue is difficult no matter who you're talking to, right? Anybody who gets up our nose, anybody who rubs us the wrong way, any conflict we have is difficult. Temperamentally, how we are wired is going to influence how we move towards, we lean towards conflict, or we lean away from it. But it's hard. We have a lot of feelings, and it's difficult work. But with our children, it seems especially weighty because so much seems riding on it, and because there's so much love there. And just want everybody to give yourselves a pat on the back. Literally, everybody give themselves a pat on the back. You've gotten here this far with your kids, and we all deserve an award, right? If we are too disengaged, if we're too laissez-faire, there are risks. If we're too engaged and leaning towards our kids, we're too fearful, there are consequences. So we're all trying to find a good starting point for dialogue. But the basic assumptions, of course, that we're going to start with here today is that we all love our kids, and that our kids love us, and that deep down, no matter how prickly they are, no matter how pubescent they are, they want to be known by us. They really do. They want to be known, they want to be embraced, they want to be understood. And to the extent that that's possible, we want to lean towards them and do that. So thank you, Sammy, for telling me that you're there. I appreciate that. And please use the chat box to drop any questions in as we go. So I want to start with just a few thoughts about some basic, what I call habits of the heart, things that we can, you know what, I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can see. Share. There it is. Let me know if that's not, let's see, how do I get to the next screen? There we go. So basic things that we can, this is a lifelong work, nurturing the habits of our heart that make a difference, right? So I'm just going to go quickly through these because I really want to do some group work where we brainstorm some ideas together. So the first one I have is letting go, remembering that our kids are not ours, right? They're only loaned to us. And if you think about it, how much control do we even have over ourselves? I'm 59 and I feel like I've gotten to maybe the 70% level of self-control. I would say that I control myself, my reactions, or my behavior about 70% of the time. So hopefully by the time I'm 95, I'll get to 85 or something like that. I only have 10 years behind. But I just point that out to say that it's hard. It's hard. We can't control others. So we need to learn to let go. And that is a spiritual practice. That involves really doing our own work. So 35 years of marriage, 10 years of family, individual, and marriage therapy. I have invested in doing a lot of my own work. And it's gotten to the point where it's really fun. I like what I'm learning. I mean, I don't always like what I see, but I really enjoy the fruits of what I'm learning from these processes of doing my own work. And we want to model that for our children. So if we're not willing to do our own work, we really can't expect them to lean into theirs. So let's just always be aware that we're modeling those things. And doing our own work means being responsible for our emotional and spiritual growth. It means being aware of our own expectations and feelings. It means processing our grief. And there's a lot of grief in parenting, isn't there? And it means owning our stuff. Vulnerability means taking the risk of affirming our children, of admitting when we've made a mistake. And also, this is the hardest one for me, articulating when they've hurt me. So I'm also a person involved in this relationship. It's not just me relating to the kids, they're relating to me too. And I also have feelings about the way they treat me or the things they do or how I act when I'm with them, right? So being vulnerable and modeling it that way, having the humility to confess, ask for forgiveness, And something I've discovered is asking for the gift of a redo. So when I don't act the way I want to act, when I have asked a poor question, when I've been intrusive, when I've conveyed judgment, I can say, you know what, I really don't like the way that went. I'd like to do a redo, may I? And of the hundreds of times I'm sure that I've asked for a redo, no one has ever denied me one. So, and that just means that, well, I was going to say brain research shows that when we actually redo something in a good way, as opposed to saying, I'm sorry, I wish I had done it this way, I should have done it that way, it's more powerful. We actually learn when we do it again and do it well the second time. It's like our bodies get a chance to relive it and to record that experience. So I really highly recommend that. And then of course, taking the long view, remembering that we're going to make mistakes. We're also going to do a lot of things right. And it's a long journey with our children. Hopefully we get a long journey with our children. And I always just try to think of how is it for God? God has to watch us stumble and fall thousands of times, but God has the long view. And so we can just not beat ourselves up when we make mistakes and just accept that there'll be another time to try it out. So next slide, interpersonal dynamics. These are just some things that are at play in any kind of conversation. This isn't just with your kids, but it can be really helpful to reframe conflict as normal and healthy and a sign of engagement. So very few of us love it when people are all worked up and our heart's beating fast and our faces are flushed and our chests are feeling tight and we're full of anger or we're in a ball of sorrow or we're very, very anxious. We don't like that. Most of us don't like conflict. But if we're willing to realize that it's inevitable and that it's material that we can work with, and if we work with it, something good can come from it. The opposite of those feelings or that engaging in conflict is denial, which is just lying to ourselves, right? Disengagement, being disinterested or uninterested, or detachment, right? Disengagement. That's the opposite of relationship. Just distinguishing between hurt and harm. There's a lot of talk about safety. Oh, you hurt my feelings. I don't feel safe here. Well, I just want to point out that although abusive situations should never be tolerated, whether your children are being abusive to you or in any other kind of relationship, that's not okay. But the truth often hurts. So when our kids say something to us that hurts our feelings, we can acknowledge that it hurts our feelings, but it's helpful to look for the truth in those things and to make a conversation around that. And we might say things that are going to hurt our children's feelings, but just saying those things, if we say them in the right way and we say them from a heart of love, we're not necessarily harming them. However, I'm going to skip down to the bottom one, which is power dynamics. It is very important, depending on what age your kid is, to remember that as a parent, we have a lot of power. I know when my kids were little, I would say something and go look in the mirror afterwards and look at how my face had looked when I said that. And I would think, oh, that was really, that is not the face of love. And when I realized, like, I'm a big person. Well, I'm a big person anyway, physically, but just compared to my children, I'm an adult and they're little. So when I put all of my sort of adult passion into this comment or into my reaction, it could easily crush them. So remembering the power dynamics that are at play is important. And that can be cross-culturally too, and all kinds of different dynamics we could do. They only gave me an hour, so I am doing sort of a rush job through here. But and then just to hop up again, this to the one above it is cultivating an awareness of our own feelings. Sometimes we don't know all that we're bringing to the table. We just get very, very caught up and very almost like, well, dysregulated, but almost engorged with emotions. We can't really peel them out. So that's part of doing our own work, right? We get to think, why did I do that? What was I feeling? And that's why I have here, when triggered, turn to wonder. I think it's Parker Palmer says, when triggered, turn to when in doubt, turn to wonder. I like to say when triggered, turn to wonder. And that is when we have curiosity about ourselves. Was that person talking to that person, that upset me so much? Why? Is that the way my dad used to talk to me? Why am I so activated right now? Why am I so upset? So that's all part of our own work and very, very important. And last slide. Oops, is that it? Yes, that is it. I want to talk about the superpower of a good question. And here I have our question woman who is representing this superpower. Krista Tippett says that a good question is a gift. And that is so true. A good question can make all the difference. It can make the difference between shutting someone down. You think, oh, I asked them a question. Why aren't they answering? Or making people feel like you really, really care and are interested. So a good question, just briefly, is open-ended, which means that a brief answer is probably not possible. A good question causes someone to reflect on the deeper issues at play. A good question is not leading. Now, there's different ways that we can ask leading questions. One of the ways that a question is leading is if we give people a lot of choices. So this is a very mundane example, but if I say to you, do you want, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Is it chocolate? Is it vanilla? Is it coffee? I think when we do that, we sort of litter the conversation field with all these options. And then the responder has to sort of jump over these boulders that we've just strewn at their feet to get at what they really like. So if someone says to me, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? If that's really an open-ended question, then I think, oh, let's see. I had that last summer. That was really good, but I liked this one. You know, I'm invited to reflect on my preferences as opposed to having to climb over and consider all these other things that were just dumped at my feet. So that's really important. And a good question doesn't express judgment. So if you have, there's different ways of trying to find out why someone did something. The worst way probably is to say, what were you thinking? Because that doesn't really express an interest in what that person was really thinking. It comes across as a judgment. Yes, these, actually, you know what? Let me drop these links in now. I'm gonna stop the share. It is so hard to talk to a screen without faces. Thank God for the interpreters here. I'm learning something about myself right now about how hard this is to do. All right, I had some resources I wanted to drop in here for you. I got a couple here. These are some tips for creating good dialogue nurturing questions. And then on the download section for this session, for this workshop, you'll find this document, which is called A Good Question is a Gift. And there's a whole bunch of examples in both the sexuality gender category and also in life choices examples. Parents asking questions of kids. And most of these are real life examples. So just to give you a couple of examples, whether you have this in front of you or not. Do you hear the difference between these two questions? A child comes out to a parent. Where did I go wrong? And this one, what does it mean to you to be queer? Can you hear the difference between that? The first one focuses on the parent. Where did I go wrong? And expresses dismay. The second version focuses on the child and expresses a genuine interest in that child. So you can see how one kind of question actually attacks and the other one actually invites. And the best kind of question is like opening a door and inviting someone into a room to explore it. A door inside of them, helping them explore their interior world. Another example. Again, so a good question is prepared to hear hard answers. How have we helped or harmed you on your journey to your understanding of sexuality? That's a helpful question, because it allows for the possibility of that child to have some hard things to say. So maybe some good things, but also some hard things. As opposed to this one, which would express one's own fears. Well, you're going to be celibate, right? Or you're not going to sleep around, right? Again, a question, but that one sort of attacks. A good question invites openness. What kept you from coming to us with this sooner? How might we have made it easier, or how can we make it easier for you to come to us in the future about things that are hard to talk about? As opposed to, why didn't you tell us sooner? A good question is a doorway to deeper intimacy. What do you most need from us right now? As opposed to simply gathering information. Are you earning enough money? Are you looking for a job? So just some examples there, and just to go over to maybe some life choice examples before we go into our brainstorming session. Here's some examples of a good question that acknowledges different experiences and shows curiosity. So for example, this is a parent. When I was growing up, I associated alcohol consumption with negative coping strategies and relational violence. These are painful associations that remain with me to this day. So you're sharing something of yourself, right? But here's the question. But you grew up in a different household and time. I'd love to hear what alcohol means to you, how you make decisions about alcohol. It's so invitational. A poor version of that might look like, why do you drink so much? You certainly didn't learn that from growing up in our house. So if we're poised, always poised as learner, as genuinely interested in the ideas of the other, as opposed to imposing our judgment, as opposed to expressing our own fear or anger or sadness, then our children are more likely to communicate with us and everybody else around us. Does that make sense? There's a lot here, and this is a lifelong practice of practicing good questions and practicing different kinds of dialogues with different kinds of people around us. And we need to remember that the goal is always relationship, especially with our kids. We want to remain in relationship with our kids. So my therapist always asks me, do you want to be in relationship or do you want to be right? The answer, of course, is I want to be in relationship. It feels so good to be right, but I have to let that go. The goal is connection with my child, not behavior management. So the goal is for our children to develop and mature their own thinking processes. Both compliance and rebellion reflect the absence of mature thinking, right? If your kid just does everything you tell them to, that's not mature. If your kid rebels against everything, that's also not mature, not thinking for themselves. So if your child comes to a decision thoughtfully, even if you don't agree with the outcome of that thought process, that's growth. And that is connection created and possibility for future connection created between you and your child. Our kids, like us, like ourselves, we learn through the fruit of our decisions, right? I don't know about you, but I am what's that word? Experiential learner. I have to put my hand on the fire to see that it really is hot, ouch. And a lot of our kids are like that too, but it freaks us out. So we react in fear and we clamp down. And good questions go a long way in helping kids develop their thinking process. Every time you come towards your child with a really good question, you are handing them a tool to better self-knowledge, to better thinking processes, and you are being willing to practice that tool with them and model that it is a lifelong practice. So yeah, the handout, David Netta can be downloaded. Also, I'm going to put my email address at the end of this, and you can email me with more questions, a desire to talk about anything. I love talking about this stuff with parents. So we only have 20 minutes left. So I wanted to just practice some of this and see if we can make some sense of it. So I came up with a few conflict scenarios. And I am going to drop a few things in the chat box here. One of them is a chart that helps us, you can access, that helps you determine and discern what some of your feelings are. Because I think sometimes we just get so overloaded, like I mentioned before, that we don't know. Am I feeling sad? Am I afraid? Or am I angry? Am I, so just help us sort of tease out. Some people are better at recognizing their emotions than others. You might not need that. But I want to look at a scenario or two. And instead of rushing to solve this, instead of rushing to come up with any solutions, I want us to focus on these three questions. If you can see them in the chat box. Oh, I keep dropping this into, I'm so sorry. I'm doing it. I forgot to put it into the everyone box. I'm so sorry, folks. Is there anything else I dropped? All right, now everyone should be able to see these. These are the things that I've shared so far. Nope, I did the same thing twice. Tips for create, oh. Okay, sorry, folks, bear with me. These are the other tip box. Tips. One more time. Okay. All right, can everybody see those three questions? What feelings does this situation engender in you? What can you affirm here? And what are some questions to ask your son or daughter or child to launch a conversation? So yeah, now you can see it, thank goodness. All right, I'm going to drop this first one in there as well. And I will confess that this is my current situation. And let me just explain, well, we'll go in order. So just pretend that, like me, your 25-year-old son ran, oh, I'm sorry, the link isn't for the feelings chart isn't working. You know what? Just everybody email me at this email address afterwards, and I will send you all the things. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's look at the scenario. Your 25-year-old son ran a red light, and when the police officer who saw him do this learned that his car registration had expired, he gave him a citation requiring him to show up at the courthouse a week later. 2 weeks later, your son tells you this story and lets you know that he didn't go to the courthouse. He now has an outstanding fine and a new court date. Okay, so pretend this is your son. And let me know in the chat box, what are the feelings that are coming up in you as you're thinking about this? What comes to mind? Anxiety. You're afraid about the consequences. Anger, what were you thinking? Okay, somebody else is very angry, wants to wring his neck. Frustration, exasperation, worry. Okay, so I think it's fair to say that we're all pretty activated here, right? So taking a minute and thinking about what you're bringing. So before you go to your son to talk to him about this, thinking about all that you're bringing to the table is a really good place to start. Now, the second question I had there was, What can you affirm here? And I think I forgot to mention that, but in my slides, but always try to start by looking for at least one thing in this conflict situation that you can affirm. So, what is one thing you can work with here? Is there anything good in this situation? Anything at all? Just start at the very baseline. He told you. Yes. They shared what really happened. Yes. Trusted me with that information. Okay, that is super, super important and absolutely easy to affirm. Might be the only thing in there, but so let's just start with that, okay? So you know how you're feeling. You know that there's some trust being shown. Now let's see if we can come up with some questions that will not try to solve his problem for him, but that will open a dialogue between the two of you. What's a question that will help you understand where he's at in his head right now or what he needs? Came home alive, so he dealt with the cop okay. Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me about what happened with the first court date. And how are you feeling about it all? Okay. Okay, so expressing interest in his feelings about the situation. That's good because we're not leading with, well, this is a super stressful situation, right? If we just remain calm and say, how are you feeling about that ticket? I'm sure you have a lot of emotions. Which one is prevailing right now? Okay. Uh-huh. What's your next step? What do you need from me in this moment? These are good. These are good. How can I help you navigate this? These are great questions. My instinct, I'm right there with you, to how can I help you? What do you need from me? What's your next step, right? Those are all good questions, but they're a little ahead of the game. So if we sit with the how are you feeling about this for a while, he might say more. And if we, what's the other thought I just had? How about, oh, thank you for telling me. What made you want to share that with me? Or what's it like for you to share that with me? That keeps it very much at the threshold, right? And gives him some room to think about it before we start moving into sort of fixing it for him or trying to brainstorm with him. I really like what's your next step or what's your plan? Because it assumes that he has a plan. So it's actually a very affirmative thing, like, oh, what are you planning to do? What do you think's going to happen? You know, that kind of thing. Just sort of engaging his troubleshooting line of thinking and assuming that he has one. If you are somebody who is wired to want to help and fix, you might want to pay attention to that and lean back. If you are somebody who is wired to lean back, it might be more effective to lean towards your child. I think there's a lot of relational dynamics that we can experiment with here because a lot of times our kids are used to us behaving in one particular way, which is our default way, right? We all have a default way. And part of our own growth is leaning towards our growth, leaning toward the thing that doesn't come supernaturally to us and trying that. So, all right, so that's an example. Does anybody have any other thoughts about that they want to explore? And again, we're not trying to fix the situation. We're just trying to talk about it. Let's see. I like the idea of trusting him to figure it out. um, yeah, let me just say one thing about that, Linda. I'm a fixer, so it took so much work to get to that place where I could ask my kid who calls me with a problem, Mom, I just got home and I'm locked out and I'm gonna be late for work. And I was the person who would be, oh, all right, I just got to my friend's house. I have to drive home. I'll be there in 15 minutes. And my friend was waving like this saying, what's your plan? Mouthing, you know, because she'd been coaching me on this. So finally I was like you could hear the tires screeching inside. What's your plan, honey? And to my incredible surprise, and probably his, he said, I'll figure it out. I had never given my kid the chance to figure things out. I was always there to fix it for, or sometimes with him, but that is a very empowering thing. What's your plan? Very simple question too. How to check your tone and facial expression. This is really important work. This is part of self-regulation. You know, it's something we learn as babies, as toddlers. Lynn is on this call, and Lynn could tell you about as a Montessori teacher, how this is a very important developmental thing that kids learn, and a lot of us don't learn it. How do we calm ourselves? And sometimes, often, I find it means me removing myself from the situation for a minute, take a beat, breathe. But that's where that patience and that long view comes in. If we think we have to respond in the minute to everything, if we think we have to fix something in the minute, then we never take the time to just say, let's talk about this tomorrow. I'm having some strong feelings. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Or, oh, you know what? I just remembered I have to turn the stove off. I make up something, or I have to go to the bathroom, or just let me get a cup of hot tea and then I'll be out on the porch again and we can talk. Just taking a beat is so helpful to help self-regulate. The tough part I have is that I easily share feelings and emotion. I lose patience when they answer nothing. I need to step back. Yes. Yeah. And here's a fine line too. Something I've been trying to learn is that going back to that power dynamic thought, because we're so powerful as their parents, we should process our feelings with our partner, with our peers, with our therapist. We should not spend very much time processing our feelings with our kids. It's really not their job to help us process our feelings. So telling your kid, I'm hurt, or that makes me sad, that's one thing. But really going through and like venting and emptying onto our kids is not helpful. We're asking something of them that is really not their job. So here's another scenario. Your 15-year-old daughter has been spending more and more time with a friend who you don't know well, and who you suspect has a very different worldview from the one you've raised your kid in. Okay, now this is a little different. The first one was a 25-year-old kid. Now this is a 15-year-old kid. So this is a kid who's still living under your roof, still very dependent on you for many things. So that's going to factor in here too, right? So what feelings does this situation engender in you? Alarm. Delight. Okay. Concerns over possible negative influence. So you're not sure, right? You suspect, you're not sure. Curiosity. Oh, okay. Fear. Okay. So there's a range of emotions there. For those of you who are feeling, oh, wonder what attracted them to that person. Okay, that's curious, right? What can you affirm in this situation? Those are good questions, Lynn. Yeah. Is the different worldview negative? How do you know? Yeah. There's something in the child's talk or behavior that suggests that she's being exposed to other things, is what I meant. Okay, you can affirm that it's great that they have a new friend, that your kid is open to people from different backgrounds. Yep. It feels like if I react with negative emotion, that at some level I'm immediately calling into question their judgment, which is a negative affirmation. Yeah, I don't know how to say negative affirmation. Okay, trust that you've laid a good foundation for your child, that your child knows how to make friends and your child is comfortable being outside of the home, right? Is adventurous with other relationships. Okay. Seeing family value of being inclusive and welcoming blossom. Okay, so there's plenty to affirm here. And some of you felt no dismay at all, which is fine. Whether you find dismay or not, although this is about conflict, what are some questions that you could start asking your daughter that would increase the odds of you having a fruitful conversation about this friendship? Tell me what you like about them. What is it that attracted you to this friend? Yeah. So you're expressing interest. There's nothing about you in there, right? It's all about your kid and their friend. What else? How do you feel about the fact that she's spending so much time? Did I say this in the example? Okay, so you don't know the friend very well, right? What does that imply? Okay, how is this friendship nurturing you? Those are great questions. Now let's get at your anxiety a little bit. You don't know this kid very well and you're not sure about what their influence is. So how can you care for yourself by asking questions that will speak to that a little bit? Do you want to invite your friend over here? If not, what are you concerned about? Mhm. Good. Yeah, how would you feel about inviting Cindy over uh, after school? This or yeah, your friend come to dinner. Yeah, and then if the kid is sort of like, that's a really good one. What are your concerns? What would keep you from inviting them over? How did you meet? How old are they? Are you learning anything new from this friend? Are you comfortable with me meeting them? Those are great questions. I just always advise to craft those as open-ended questions. So that might look like, what are you learning from your new friend? What would make you the most comfortable? I'd love to meet this new friend. What can I do that would make you comfortable bringing them home? Or what's the setup that you'd feel most comfortable bringing them? You want to bring them for dinner? Do you want them to stop by after school? And even how does it make you feel that I want to know your friends too, that I'm interested in knowing your friends? As a parent, you have a right to know who your children's friends are, right? It's your job to know what influences your kids are being exposed to. Okay, those are great. Those are great questions. And there's so much more I would like to do with this, but we only have 2 more minutes. So does anybody have any like overall questions? There have been some great ones that came in. And I did want to address this one thing that somebody dropped on the Whova site, which was, how do we encourage those who aren't affirming to listen and be curious when they become defensive? I just want to say one thing about that. That is a question about making someone do something that you want. So how do I so you're not affirming, how do I help you listen and be curious instead of defensive? That is not the place to start with dialogue. A better place to start would be to ask, to try and understand who that person is, why they're, oh, it is, we do have till, I thought it was over at 5:30. Oh my gosh. Yes, you're right, Lynn. Thank you. We have 15 minutes. So in other words, that scenario, when you're talking with somebody who's not affirming and is defensive, would just be to spend some time trying to get to know them with questions. Help me understand how you came to your position on whatever they're affirming. I assume it's about sexuality, that you're non-affirming position. What kind of queer people do you have in your life? What other questions? Actually, you all help me with that. You're dealing with somebody who you feel a conflict with because they're not affirming and they become defensive when you share your ideas. What are some questions we could ask that person? Oh, there's a question in the Q&A. Okay. All right, well, we'll go back to this one first. Does anything about my position bother you? Okay. I love that. I really like that because you're inviting them to share their ideas of yours. Let's just recraft it as open-ended, which would look something like, what about my beliefs are most upsetting to you or most jarring to you? Why is this important to you? How is what I'm sharing making you feel? Yeah, really good questions. Always putting the focus on the other person and discovering. That's what makes a compassionately curious question. You get your own ego out of the way and you just focus on the other person. What do you feel is at stake in needing to take a non-affirming position? There's something a little attacky about needing, Steve, there. I think, what do you feel is at stake in this conversation is a great question. What's at stake? If we get this wrong, what do you feel is at stake? What do you love that you feel is at risk here? Finding out what people love and what they fear is the best way to understand them. Tell me your story. Yeah. See, it doesn't even have a question mark at the end of it, but it's a beautiful question. It's an invitation. Yeah, maybe don't use non-affirming. Yeah, avoiding words that can cramp us for sure. Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, listen, we have a real life situation here in the Q&A. Can everybody see the Q&A? From an anonymous attendee, because my transgender 20-year-old is so fragile, our family walks on eggshells around him. However, at times we are borderline in an abusive relationship with the way he treats us, more times than not. He's on testosterone and medication for depression and anxiety, so we get that how he's acting is in direct reflection to all the medicine he has coursing through his body, but where do you draw the line? Unless I'm being too dramatic, it's almost elderly abuse. I'm worried I'm going to blow at some point and it will push him over the edge. He mentions suicide a lot, and I never want to take that lightly. That is a heavy situation, and there's a lot of factors involved there. Um, so let's workshop this. We can't see that. Okay, thank you for that. Let's workshop this a little bit. Let's start by the feelings that this is bringing up for people to hear that story. So there's a transgender son. He's in the home. Okay, is he in therapy and are you? Is a very good question, because the supports that are around this kid and you are extremely important. Yeah. So the feelings, helpless. Yeah. What else? What else are we feeling as parents? Okay. The person is worried about their kid, but also worried about having their own feelings. Okay. You're all in therapy separately. That's excellent. So you have places to process some of those things. Sadness for him, for how hard it is for him. Right. Yeah. As hard as it is to be treated poorly, do you feel you are in as fragile a state as your child? Essentially, can you roll with him and his behavior? Yeah, dialogue, we're talking about dialogue and conflict. It gets a lot trickier when you're talking about mental health issues, especially when there's suicidality involved. So I'm not going to advise in this. I am not a therapist. But if you wanted to start a conversation with your son, well, let's go back to the beginning and say, like, what can we affirm here? What could we move towards this son and tell him that we can affirm? Just to exercise that sort of on ramp to dialogue a little bit. What do we see here that we feel comfortable and have integrity affirming? Okay. I really admire your courage in transitioning. Yeah. Trauma. Absolutely. Holly. Yep. Right. So leading with love and connection. We're so great. We're so glad that you're our son, that God saw fit to give you to us. Um, we really appreciate that we are in relationship with you. Yeah. Okay. These are good. So what are some questions? What could we be curious about for our kid here? How can we approach this young man with curiosity? See if we can send our friend off here with a couple of good questions. Anybody have any ideas? What do you need from me right now? Yeah, that's showing kindness. Mhm. What do you need from me? How can we support you when you feel triggered? What were you feeling in that moment? So the kid acts out in some way. Oh, I like that one, Jody. What is it like for you today on your journey? What's it like to be you, kiddo? What would you like me to know about you? How have I made this harder for you? And you can also flip that and what have you found that's helpful? What have I done? Or here's a good one. when do you feel loved by me? When do you feel most at home in this family? How do you feel about being on these drugs? What scares you about it? What's exciting? I think when people feel seen and heard and really invited to share who they are, like these kinds of questions would um, would make someone feel, they're less likely to be defensive. But there are also so many dynamics that could be at play here, so it's really hard. But I think that kind, open-hearted, open-ended questions that are genuinely curious about your kid would be very helpful. Does he know he is unconditionally loved and accepted by you? Yeah, so that question, when do you feel most loved by me? I asked my kids a couple months ago, what's hard about being part of this family? And what's good? What's good about being part of this family? And it shocked me by answering me immediately. They had answers like that. Oh. Hmm. Yeah. I just want to take a minute to, let's see. It also seems like the best time to ask these questions is when things are not. Oh, that's a great point, Grace. Choosing the timing of conversations. And other thing I found really helpful with our kids is to say, I have some thoughts about this. Um, Let me know if you're interested in hearing them and when would be a good time for you. Giving kids that space instead of just walking into the room and saying, we're going to talk now. um, I can see that you're upset right now. When would be a better time to talk about this? And it puts the agency back in their hands. And they feel like they're being invited and treated respectfully. Words of encouragement. It's beautiful. Yeah. Parenting is a community project. I don't think we were meant to do it alone. And I know that we can't do it well alone. So that's what's so beautiful about this parent community here. Somebody was asking if I'll be at the parent summit. I don't have any plans, but I can talk to maybe that would be something we could work out. I don't know, but I did give you my email address, and I do encourage you to connect with me because we do have some resources for parents, resources for pastors, things you can share with a pastor to help your church understand some of the things that you're going through. And I just love hanging out with people who like to ask good questions. I'm just to go along the same in the same vein, because we have a couple minutes left and I don't see any other questions coming in. Just to repeat, just to encourage you to go back to this. A good question is a gift document that I will send you if you email me. Here's one. Considering where your child is in their process. So again, this is the sexuality of kids come out to them. Are there any questions or concerns you have? Can you help me talk to anyone or access any information? So you're looking to get educated, as opposed to, this one, somebody came out to their parents and said they're gay. My relationship with my girlfriend is, it's just, and the parent said, when's the wedding? I think the parent was rushing so fast up. I don't think I put it in there. I think the parent was in such a hurry. She was tripping over herself to affirm her child that she rushed ahead. And that was not a helpful way to do it either. When's the wedding? Like, Mom, I just told you that she's my girlfriend, so sorry, I'm just going to drop this in here. Everybody see that? I feel so anxious when I can't see the people I'm talking to. So I just want to say that it would be great to get together with y'all. And hopefully I'll do a better job of expressing myself and connecting with you all in person. But these limits are as they are. But that's the end of the session. Please do email me and I will share everything that I have with you. Okay? Oof. All right. Thank you for coming. Jenna, Janine, Lynn, Holly, thank you so much. Vanessa. Thank you. Thank you, talking to a box. Oh, bless you all. My prayers are with you. All right. Thank you, Oscar. Lovely meeting you.
You're very welcome. You did so good.
Oh my gosh.
It was amazing.
Not my thing.